The moment the video begins, please pulled into a story that demands attention, and before anything else unfolds, please comment on where they are watching from and to subscribe for more stories like this. The story opens with Liang Wei, a respected Chinese kung fu master whose reputation stretches across Asia, stepping into an international martial arts symposium with confidence bordering on arrogance. For decades, Liang had been praised for discipline, precision, and a lineage tied to ancient traditions. Yet on this day, his focus was not on teaching or learning, but on proving superiority. When the topic of Filipino martial arts surfaced, Liang smiled dismissively, making a remark that echoed across the room and online streams. He called them crude, improvised, and inferior. That single moment, casual and careless, planted the seed of a confrontation that would soon challenge everything Liang believed about strength, tradition, and respect. Liang's words did not remain confined to the hall. Clips spread rapidly online, igniting reactions from martial artists worldwide. Many dismissed his comments as typical rivalry, but in the Philippines, the response was quieter and more deliberate. Among those who watched was Ramon Delgado, a soft-spoken eskrima instructor from Cebu who had spent his life preserving techniques passed down through generations. Ramon did not rush to defend his art with words. He believed that Filipino martial traditions spoke best through practice and humility. While commentators argued and insulted each other online, Ramon continued teaching his students, emphasizing timing, awareness, and respect. He saw Liang's mockery not as a personal attack, but as an opportunity. History had shown him that arrogance often invites its own correction. What Ramon did not yet know was that circumstances were already aligning to bring him face to face with the man who doubted everything he stood for. As debate intensified, the organizers of the symposium announced a closed-door cultural exchange session, meant to promote mutual understanding between martial traditions. Liang agreed immediately, confident that such an event would further cement his authority. To him, Filipino martial arts were little more than stick fighting dressed in folklore. Ramon received the invitation quietly, almost reluctantly, urged by colleagues who believed representation mattered. He accepted, not to prove dominance but to honor his teachers. The contrast between the two men could not have been clearer. Liang prepared demonstrations filled with dramatic forms and rigid sequences, while Ramon arrived with no entourage and minimal equipment. Observers sensed tension but expected nothing extraordinary. After all, Liang was the master with fame, titles, and international acclaim. Ramon was simply a practitioner from a small island nation. Few imagined that this imbalance in perception would soon collapse in front of everyone watching. The session began with polite exchanges and rehearsed smiles. Liang spoke confidently about discipline, structure, and the purity of form. When it was his turn to demonstrate, he performed flawlessly, each movement crisp and controlled, earning nods of approval. Then came Ramon's turn. Instead of a grand display, he spoke briefly about adaptability and survival, explaining that Filipino martial arts were shaped by real conflict rather than ceremony. Some listeners leaned forward, curious, while others appeared unconvinced. Ramon demonstrated simple movements, almost unimpressive to the untrained eye. Liang smirked, whispering to those nearby that such techniques lacked refinement. Yet something subtle shifted in the room. Those with practical experience noticed efficiency rather than flash. Ramon's movements were economical, his posture relaxed, his awareness constant. It was clear he was not there to impress, but to communicate something deeper, something Liang had never needed to consider. The turning point came when a controlled exchange was proposed, not a fight, but a demonstration of applied principles. Liang accepted instantly, seeing it as a chance to expose weakness. Ramon agreed without hesitation, requesting only safety rules and mutual respect. When they faced each other, the atmosphere tightened. Liang initiated with speed and confidence, expecting Ramon to retreat. Instead, Ramon stepped in calmly, redirecting force rather than meeting it. Observers noticed how quickly Liang's rhythm was disrupted. His movements, once precise, began to feel forced. Ramon remained composed, responding rather than reacting. Within moments, the exchange ended, not with a dramatic throw, but with Liang subtly off balance, his control compromised. Silence followed. No one clapped. No one spoke. The realization settled slowly but heavily. What had just occurred contradicted every assumption many had brought into the room. Liang laughed it off at first, insisting it was merely a misunderstanding of rules. He asked for another exchange, this time suggesting more intensity. Ramon nodded, agreeing but reminding everyone that escalation carried lessons as well as risks. The second exchange unfolded differently. Liang attacked aggressively, abandoning elegance for power. Ramon responded with precision, targeting timing and distance, neutralizing each advance without hostility. It became clear that Filipino martial arts were not about overpowering an opponent, but about ending conflict efficiently. Liang's frustration grew visible. Each failed attempt chipped away at his certainty. Observers began to whisper, not out of excitement, but disbelief. The session concluded without a declared winner, yet the outcome was unmistakable. Liang's mockery no longer carried weight. The man who had dismissed an entire tradition now faced a quiet but undeniable truth unfolding before him. In the days that followed, online narratives shifted. Clips of the exchange circulated widely, analyzed frame by frame. Commentators who once echoed Liang's sentiments now questioned them. Meanwhile, Liang retreated from public commentary, a rare move for someone accustomed to attention. Privately, he struggled. His identity was deeply tied to mastery and recognition. To acknowledge error felt like betrayal of everything he had built. Ramon returned home, resuming his routine without celebration. When asked for interviews, he declined most, stating that the art was not about proving others wrong. This contrast further amplified public interest. People were drawn not only to the technical outcome, but to the character revealed. Liang's certainty had been loud. Ramon's confidence had been quiet. One had mocked, the other had responded with restraint. The story was no longer about martial arts alone, but about humility confronting pride. Weeks later, an unexpected message arrived at Ramon's school. It was from Liang. The tone was formal, restrained, and carefully worded. Liang requested a private meeting, away from cameras and audiences. He expressed curiosity, not apology, but curiosity nonetheless. Ramon discussed it with his senior students, some urging caution, others seeing potential value. Eventually, Ramon agreed, believing that dialogue mattered more than vindication. They met in a modest training hall, far removed from symposium stages. Without spectators, Liang appeared different, less guarded, more human. He admitted that what unsettled him was not the loss of balance, but the realization that his understanding of effectiveness had limits. Ramon listened without interruption. He knew that real learning often begins where ego feels most uncomfortable. Their conversations stretched over days, evolving from guarded exchanges into genuine discussion. Liang asked about history, about why Filipino martial arts emphasized adaptability. Ramon spoke of colonization, survival, and the need to defend without resources. He explained that form existed, but not for display. Each movement was meant to solve a problem. Liang shared his own journey, one defined by structure, hierarchy, and preservation of tradition. Slowly, parallels emerged. Both arts had been shaped by struggle, just in different contexts. What separated them was not superiority, but emphasis. Liang realized that his mockery had come from ignorance, not malice. This understanding weighed heavily on him. For the first time in years, he felt like a student again, uncertain yet curious, challenged yet inspired. The meeting concluded without fanfare. No joint statements were released. Yet change was already in motion. Liang began quietly incorporating concepts of adaptability into his training, questioning rigid interpretations he had once defended. His students noticed the shift, sensing a deeper humility in his instruction. Ramon continued teaching as before, but with renewed conviction that openness could bridge even the widest divides. When the symposium organizers announced a follow-up event focused on cross-cultural learning, both men were invited. This time, Liang did not hesitate, nor did he posture. He prepared not to demonstrate dominance, but to share perspective. The anticipation surrounding the event grew, fueled by speculation about whether reconciliation or rivalry would define their next encounter. Few understood that the real transformation had already occurred, far from public view. At the follow-up event, Liang addressed the audience with an unexpected tone. He acknowledged that his earlier comments had been dismissive and incomplete. He spoke about the dangers of judging effectiveness through spectacle alone. The room listened intently. When he introduced Ramon, he did so with respect, crediting him for challenging long-held assumptions. Ramon responded briefly, emphasizing that martial arts, at their core, were tools for protection and self-understanding, not vehicles for ego. The demonstration that followed was collaborative rather than competitive. Techniques were explained, contrasted, and contextualized. Observers noted how seamlessly principles overlapped despite surface differences. What stunned many was not technical brilliance, but the visible shift in Liang's demeanor. The man who once mocked now listened. The master had become a student in front of the world. Public reaction was swift and intense. Some praised Liang's humility, others criticized him for conceding ground. Yet the broader impact was undeniable. Discussions shifted from hierarchy to effectiveness, from tradition versus tradition to purpose versus ego. Schools across Asia and Southeast Asia began exploring exchanges, workshops, and joint seminars. Filipino martial arts gained renewed attention, not as curiosities, but as sophisticated systems shaped by necessity. Ramon found himself fielding messages from practitioners worldwide seeking understanding rather than validation. He responded selectively, reminding them that learning required patience. Liang, meanwhile, faced backlash from purists within his own circles. Some accused him of diluting tradition. He responded calmly, stating that tradition survived not by stagnation, but by relevance. This stance cost him certain endorsements, but strengthened his resolve. Behind the scenes, Liang reflected often on the moment that had triggered everything. A careless laugh, a dismissive comment, a failure to listen. He recognized how easily authority could become arrogance when unchallenged. Teaching felt different now. Instead of presenting answers, he posed questions. His students initially struggled with this shift, accustomed to certainty. Over time, however, their understanding deepened. Ramon observed similar changes among his own students, who followed the story closely. They learned that restraint could be as powerful as confrontation. The narrative surrounding the exchange matured, moving beyond viral clips into case studies, articles, and long-form discussions. What began as mockery had evolved into one of the most discussed examples of intercultural learning in modern martial discourse. Years later, the story continued to resurface, often retold with varying emphasis. Some focused on technique, others on pride, others on reconciliation. Ramon remained largely unchanged, still teaching in the same hall, still emphasizing awareness and humility. Liang traveled more selectively, choosing engagements that prioritized learning over spectacle. When asked in interviews about the incident, he no longer deflected. He spoke openly about the dangers of underestimating unfamiliar systems. He credited Filipino martial arts with expanding his understanding of combat and culture. This honesty resonated beyond martial circles, reaching educators, leaders, and professionals in unrelated fields. The lesson was universal. Expertise without openness breeds stagnation. Respect invites growth. The stunned reaction people remembered was not the loss of balance in a demonstration, but the visible collapse of an inflated certainty. The symposium footage is still viewed today, often paused at the moment where Liang's expression shifts from confidence to confusion. Analysts dissect movements, but many miss the deeper significance. That pause represents the instant when belief meets reality without preparation. Ramon has said that the exchange was never about winning. It was about revealing possibilities. Liang has since echoed that sentiment, acknowledging that the most valuable lessons often arrive uninvited. Their story is taught in some schools not as a rivalry, but as a reminder of why martial arts exist. They are not monuments to the past, but living systems shaped by context. When stripped of ego, they become languages through which cultures communicate. The stunned silence that followed Liang's mockery was the sound of assumptions dissolving, replaced by something far more enduring. As new generations encounter this story, interpretations continue to evolve. Younger practitioners see it as validation that effectiveness matters more than image. Others view it as proof that humility is a skill developed through experience, not rank. Ramon has noticed that students now ask fewer questions about superiority and more about purpose. Liang has observed similar changes, with students eager to explore rather than defend. This shift represents the quiet legacy of their encounter. It did not create a new style or doctrine, but it challenged a mindset. The world of martial arts, often fragmented by lineage and pride, found in this story a moment of convergence. What followed the mockery was not defeat, but transformation, unfolding slowly, deliberately, and without the need for spectacle. Despite widespread discussion, Ramon and Liang rarely appear together now. Their paths intersect occasionally, marked by mutual respect rather than obligation. When they do meet, conversation flows easily, grounded in shared understanding. Neither claims ownership of the narrative. They recognize that stories grow beyond their origins. The initial mockery has become almost secondary, overshadowed by what followed. Students encountering the tale today are often surprised that such a small comment could spark such change. That surprise reinforces the lesson. Small moments reveal character more clearly than grand declarations. Ramon's restraint and Liang's eventual humility combined to create a turning point neither could have planned. The stunned reaction that captivated audiences was simply the outward expression of an inward reckoning. The broader cultural impact extended into media and academia. Researchers cited the exchange when discussing embodied knowledge and cross-cultural learning. Documentaries framed it as a modern parable about expertise. Social platforms, once the breeding ground for ridicule, became spaces for thoughtful debate. While not all discussions were constructive, the overall tone shifted. Filipino martial arts were no longer framed defensively. They stood confidently on their own terms. Liang's willingness to evolve gave others permission to question inherited assumptions. Ramon's quiet confidence demonstrated that validation need not be loud. Together, their story illustrated how respect transforms competition into collaboration. What followed the mockery was not a dramatic victory, but a redefinition of what mastery truly means. Over time, Liang began referencing the encounter when mentoring younger instructors. He warned them about the comfort of certainty and the danger of dismissing unfamiliar approaches. His advice carried weight precisely because it was born of experience. Ramon, meanwhile, emphasized to his students that being underestimated could be an advantage if met with clarity rather than resentment. These parallel teachings reinforced the same principle from different angles. The martial arts community absorbed these lessons unevenly, but steadily. The story endured because it was not perfect or staged. It unfolded through human reactions, missteps, and growth. The stunned response that followed the mockery reflected a collective realization that strength and wisdom are not monopolized by any one traditio. As digital archives preserve the footage, future viewers encounter the exchange without the surrounding noise of the moment. Even stripped of commentary, the interaction speaks. Liang's initial confidence, Ramon's composure, the subtle shift in balance, the silence afterward. These elements tell a story beyond words. They show how quickly certainty can falter when confronted with reality. Ramon has said that silence was the most powerful part of the exchange. It allowed truth to settle without interpretation. Liang has agreed, noting that applause or outrage would have diluted the lesson. What followed stunned everyone not because of a technical outcome, but because of the restraint shown by both men at a critical moment. In reflecting on this story, many overlook the courage required to change publicly. Liang faced criticism not only from peers, but from within himself. Letting go of superiority felt like losing ground, until he realized it was gaining perspective. Ramon faced a different challenge, resisting the urge to capitalize on attention. He chose consistency over recognition. Their choices shaped how the narrative evolved. The story did not descend into rivalry or exploitation. Instead, it matured into an example of how conflict can become connection. The stunned reaction became less about shock and more about recognition. People recognized themselves in the moment of reassessment, when certainty gives way to learn. Today, the phrase associated with the incident often surfaces in discussions about respect across disciplines. It serves as shorthand for the dangers of dismissive expertise. Ramon's school continues operating quietly, its influence extending far beyond its walls. Liang's teachings now emphasize context and adaptability alongside tradition. Neither claims to have all the answers. This shared uncertainty has become their greatest strength. The stunned reaction that once echoed through a symposium hall now resonates in classrooms, training spaces, and conversations worldwide. It reminds practitioners that mastery is not a destination, but a process shaped by openness. What followed the mockery was not an ending, but a beginning that continues to unfold. The enduring appeal of this story lies in its simplicity. A comment, a response, a shift. There were no villains or heroes in the conventional sense. Only individuals shaped by their histories, confronting the limits of their understanding. Ramon never sought to embarrass Liang. Liang never intended to provoke transformation. Yet together, they created a moment that transcended intention. This unpredictability is what keeps the story alive. It resists neat conclusions, inviting reflection instead. Each retelling emphasizes different facets, depending on the listener's perspective. The stunned silence remains the constant, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to mockery is quiet competence. As time passes, new contexts give the story fresh relevance. In an era defined by instant judgment, it offers a counterexample. It shows the value of patience, listening, and embodied understanding. Ramon's approach demonstrates that confidence need not announce itself. Liang's evolution shows that authority need not fear revision. Together, their journey challenges the idea that respect must be demanded. Instead, it can be earned through integrity. The stunned reaction following the mockery was a collective pause, a moment when preconceived narratives failed. That pause continues to inspire those willing to sit with discomfort long enough to learn from it. Educators outside martial arts have adopted the story as a teaching tool. It illustrates how expertise can blind as easily as it can enlighten. Ramon and Liang are often cited without embellishment, their actions sufficient to convey the lesson. Students are encouraged to identify moments in their own fields where dismissal replaces curiosity. The story's adaptability mirrors the principles it highlights. It fits wherever pride obstructs growth. What followed the mockery resonates because it reveals how quickly perspectives can change when challenged respectfully. The stunned response was not engineered. It emerged naturally from an encounter grounded in reality rather than performance. Ramon has occasionally reflected on whether he would have acted differently if the exchange had drawn hostility instead of silence. He believes composure would have remained essential. Liang has said that the absence of aggression allowed him to see clearly. These reflections underscore the importance of environment in learning. The symposium provided a space, however imperfect, for truth to surface. Without that space, the mockery might have remained unchallenged. The story reminds us that progress often depends on creating conditions where listening is possible. What followed stunned everyone because it revealed how rarely such conditions are met. As martial arts continue to evolve globally, the exchange between Liang and Ramon is referenced as a milestone. Not because it crowned a champion, but because it dismantled a hierarchy. It showed that effectiveness cannot be ranked by origin alone. This realization encourages cross-pollination rather than competition. Schools collaborate, instructors exchange ideas, and students benefit. The ripple effects continue quietly, far removed from viral outrage. The stunned reaction that once captured attention has transformed into sustained dialogue. That transformation is the true legacy of the encounter, enduring long after the initial shock fade. D. When asked what he hopes people take from the story, Ramon often answers simply that respect saves time. It prevents unnecessary conflict and accelerates learning. Liang echoes this sentiment, adding that humility preserves relevance. These concise reflections contrast sharply with the complexity of the journey that led to them. The mockery that sparked everything now seems almost insignificant compared to what followed. Yet without it, the transformation might never have occurred. This paradox reinforces the story's depth. Moments of failure can become catalysts for growth if met with the right response. The stunned reaction marked the turning point where possibility replaced certain. Tai. The story concludes not with closure, but with continuity. Ramon still trains daily, refining principles that prioritize awareness. Liang continues teaching, balancing tradition with inquiry. Their paths diverge and intersect, shaped by mutual respect. The exchange that once defined them now serves as a reference point rather than an identity. This evolution reflects the essence of martial arts as living practices. They adapt, absorb, and respond. The stunned reaction that followed the mockery was simply the first visible sign of an ongoing process. That process continues wherever assumptions are challenged by expiry. NCE. Ultimately, what followed the mockery stunned everyone because it defied expectation. There was no dramatic defeat, no public shaming, no clear victor. Instead, there was learning, humility, and growth. These outcomes are less sensational, but far more lasting. The story endures because it speaks to something universal. It reminds us that certainty is fragile, respect is powerful, and understanding often arrives quietly. Liang's laughter faded, replaced by curiosity. Ramon's silence spoke louder than words. Together, they demonstrated that the greatest shifts occur not through domination, but through openness. The stunned reaction was the world witnessing a moment of collective learning, still unfolding with each retelling.